Joining us right now, y'all, is attorney, my friend, Paul. What I said, Paul? Jack Paul.
That's her, the man of three first names.
Did I say I can't be the one to make that mistake? I can't be the first one to make that mistake to start off with Paul.
No, you're not. That's okay. People call me a lot worse, so it's okay.
Absolutely, man.
Thank you for having me. Always nice to see you, my friend.
Absolutely, man, and you too, man. So, man, so much has happened since the last time we spoke. What do you make of the recent developments?
I think in general, I think it's getting really messy. I think these distractions are hurting. I see them as distractions, but I think these developments are hurting why we all came together in the first place, which is to find out what happened to Nolan. I think everyone wants that. Whether you have like Elliot said, whether you have a premeditated idea of what happened or you just want to know openly, but all these new developments, they're not helping. They're distracting. They're creating more hurdles, I think. There's an old adage, you get more flies with honey than vinegar. And right now there's a lot of vinegar out there. So from a legal standpoint, I don't think this is going to get the intended result.
So what evidence would prosecutors need before presenting this case to a grand jury?
How about any evidence? Some evidence. They have none. They have none right now. Talking as a defense attorney, I'm so legally, objectively, I'm not saying this is how I feel or what I want, but from a legal standpoint, from a criminal law standpoint, they have nothing. They don't have any one single suspect. The fact that anyone could be a suspect means that no one's a suspect. They have no concrete motive that's any more probable than any other motive. They can't pinpoint his location. They can't pinpoint who he was. They have nothing concrete, and the prosecutor has certain legal obligations. They have to put a good faith basis before they present anything to a grand jury. This could go any which way. They can't put forth a multiple prong, a hydra prosecution. They can't say it could be this or this or this, because that creates reasonable doubt in all the possibilities. They have to say, this is what happened.
So let me ask you this. So you don't think the inconsistencies in the witnesses' stories, you don't think that the fact that they withheld the phone, withheld his keys, knowing that he was missing, didn't return him to the family until the family came looking for him, you don't think that, and here's a big one right here, this is the powwow. You don't think that the fact that that phone call where you hear voices on there saying, hey, Nolan, get up, Nolan, wake up, Bart, what the F did you do? You don't think that conversation that was happening before the phone was connected with the CTO dispatcher means anything? You don't think that's evidence?
I think it's evidence, right? But of what? And
evidence of a crime that was committed.
Maybe. So I agree. Anyone can draw an inference from that, right? The prosecutor has to be able to draw only one inference from that. That's their dilemma. It could be nefarious. It could be an accident. It could be not at all related to his death. And we can all speculate. We can all draw an opinion, and that's fair. And it's equally balanced. The prosecutor has to be sure or believe they're sure it's only one option. That's their dilemma.
The prosecutor has to be sure that there's only one option. Why do they have to have only one option?
Because their burden is beyond and to the exclusion of every other reasonable doubt. As a defense attorney, if I can say, well, it may have been a homicide, but it may have been an accident, or it may have been not involved at all. He may have fallen over. And if any of those are plausible, then none of them are more probable. They have to show that this is what happened and everything else didn't happen. If they think two possibilities are equally viable, they're not doing their ethical duty on prosecuting a case. That's the crux of the issue for the state. They have to believe they're right in the one version. And it seems to be that they're not yet comfortable committing to any version.
How significant are the inconsistencies in the stories to the case?
I think they're significant. I think the question is significant to what, right? They're significant in that if things don't add up, they create more questions, right? And that's why we're here. But is it an issue of that someone committed a homicide? Is it an issue of that someone is covering for an accident? Because the reality is, as much as no one has passed away, almost every other person there, including people who have said, I don't know them, but said were his best friends, his good friends. They seem to be showing concern. I'm not going to say it's authentic or not. They're all being looked at possible suspects for murder, right? And so it's, from a legal standpoint, natural to be concerned about that, whether you're innocent or guilty. As an attorney, as a defense attorney, I've watched interrogations of people who I later learned were innocent and guilty. The innocent ones always seem more nervous, right? And it's natural to be nervous when you're accused of a crime, whether you did it or not. You're being put on the hot seat. And these are kids. So it goes to something. We just don't know yet what it goes to. Are they being inconsistent because they're simply 18, 19, 20, don't have a lot of life experience, they've not dealt with law enforcement before? A lot of people, the first time they deal with police, just look uneasy because as much as we're told to trust the police, no one likes being interrogated by police. It's not a fun experience. And you're being looked at for a crime. So that's going to be daunting on anybody. It goes to, they're clearly uneasy. That's to be expected. It goes to, I think someone knows something. I think you go back to the kid who made the call, not the kids that are on the boat. You should interrogate them anyway. But given that it's been established, or there's been evidence that no one went off without them, like I've said, I think people should be looking equally hard at other possibilities, other friends, other locations. Look at the first boat, look at the friends, but look at everyone, because to the point, no one has been ruled out. We don't know. It's important, but it doesn't give us the why. We just know an inconsistency is a bad look.
Can any of these friends face criminal charges if it's proven that they have lied? If they lied to the investigators, can they face criminal charges?
So they are all facing potential charges, not necessarily for perjury, but let's step down from homicide for a moment, right? It could be tampering with evidence. I think that's something a lot of people have not talked about that seems more plausible to me. That's not what people want. People are looking for a killer. But everyone's point about the phone, the keys, the calls, that goes to, and again, did you tamper? Did you in any way manipulate any possible evidence? That, I think, is something more possible for a lot of people here, depending on what their involvement was or wasn't, what they knew or not. There's been discussion of were messages deleted from Nolan's phone. That, to me, if established, would be a classic example, if Nolan wasn't the one who did it, right, of tampering with evidence. That, I think, and then from there, dominoes start to fall, right? Because if someone's established to have tampered with evidence, well, why would you have done that? Was it for your benefit, a friend's benefits, right? Sometimes maybe it's better to start small, catch someone on something, and you work off of that. That, I think, is, but perjury, as much as the police are allowed to lie to us. We all know that. Police, when they interrogate us, I'm your friend, don't worry, I'll talk to the prosecutor, you're not doing anything wrong, I know you're innocent, but we're allowed to lie to them too. We have no obligation to self-incriminate ourselves. We have no obligation to violate our Fifth Amendment rights to avoid self-incrimination. So, they're not under oath Now, I'm not saying that looks good, but it's not chargeable in and of itself, again, unless it goes to some kind of destruction, manipulation of evidence.
So what kind of legal hurdles do the prosecution face for dealing with circumstantial evidence? Because that's a big part of it. It's more circumstantial evidence than hard evidence in this case.
I mean, at this point, it's almost become, what hurdle aren't they facing? We discussed this before. Because it's circumstantial, and that's a great way to phrase what we have, right? They still lack a concrete motive, right? Now, we've discussed, could it be this possible love interest, right? Was there another suitor that was looking to favor this girl, right? That we see that happen in real life. Was it friends on a boat? Whether he fell off, was pushed off, right? That's plausible because he was found in the water. He wasn't found like in a bedroom, in a pool. He was found just by himself. But again, one motive is equally plausible to the other. They both make sense. And we don't know which way it could have been because we don't know who was even involved in his last moments. So that's part of the issue with circumstantial evidence. There's no, even in circumstantial evidence, usually there's one item that's a smoking gun. We know how he passed. We know why he passed. We know where he passed. We don't know any of that. We don't know what was the ultimate cause of his death. Was it a drowning, intentional or not? Was it something before that, before he went in the water? You know, we discussed looking at his throat and neck and the back of his head. Was it a competing lover? Was it a friend that was drunk? There's so many whys here. They have no concrete answer for any of the, where, when, how, why. All of it is equally in play for them to go forward. I mean, as a defense attorney at this point, with how messy it is, this is my best case scenario as a defense attorney, because now the moment they try, if they try to go on one theory, I'm going to say as a defense attorney, that's really interesting because all these months you had no idea, and now you have all this public pressure, and now you decided to charge my client for this crime and this motive. When months ago you didn't know, but now all of a sudden you know, you have no new evidence to say, you have nothing. Now that you're just deciding because you're being pressured by your community. I would have a field day as a defense attorney for any of these. Give me any kid, I'll give you an acquittal right now. Okay. They've had nothing for so long. You're going to try to tell me that now all of a sudden, no, you capitulated to your community, to the outcry, to the public attention. I would tear this apart now because they don't know. They don't know. And that's the people who need to know. You and I can speculate and theorize. It all makes sense. They need to know. And I'm going to say, you never knew. You can't know now. Nothing's changed.
So if this case eventually goes to a grand jury, what should the public understand about the process?
So they should understand that it's only the beginning, not the end. It's not proof. It's not the burden the prosecutor would have at a trial. It's, do they have enough, a probable cause? It's probable that this happened. They have to understand that there's no defense put into the grand jury. Okay? That effectively, I've indicted my own ham sandwich because there wasn't enough mustard on it. That's how easy it is to get an indictment as a prosecutor. Okay? You have to be asleep behind the wheel to not get an indictment on a case. Okay? An indictment is all but a given. Okay? It's a one-way conversation. It's like you and I having a debate, and I get to say nothing, and you talk, and then you ask your audience, who do you think was right, Willie or Jack? They're gonna go with you. I didn't say anything. I didn't get to. You didn't even see my face. So the indictment means nothing. Now, conversely, if they don't get an indictment, I mean, can this get any worse from a public relations standpoint for this state attorney's office? I mean, they can't win for losing. So it's a matter, if they don't get it, it's like, they're going to be blamed for being incompetent. right? Whatever the evidence is, or they're going to be blamed for being so incompetent or motivated to kind of scuttle the case. They're never going to get a benefit. I'm not saying they should. And I would be just as critical of them as a defense attorney if they tried now for the same reason. You've made such a mess of this. You're now deferring it to a jury, hoping they will clean up your mess one way or the other. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not my fault there's no indictment. A jury of your peers decided. Or, ladies and gentlemen, it's not my decision he was indicted. The grand jury decided. They almost so want to punt this to blame someone else, whichever way it goes.
So you're the defense attorney. You're in the courtroom right now. The grand jury has moved forward with an indictment. Now you are standing before the courtroom and you're presenting the case. Which of these guys, in your opinion, is the strongest link or the weakest link? Which one of these guys, who's the strongest link and who's the weakest link in this?
Yeah. Right. So if I had to pick someone who I thought was most likely to have charges brought against them, I'm not saying they're strong. I think, again, it goes to the kid who called his mom. The kid who called his mom is the one most likely to know something at the most critical time before Nolan's death, because he was the one that knew enough to make a call to an attorney, who happens to be his mom, to say, I know something about a kid who may not be doing so well right now. That's the kid that I think has the most to fear, whether he did something or not, because it goes to, how did you know to make that call? And what was the call? And we're not going to know that, right? Now, the flip side is, if I'm his attorney, again, I always tell, it's a scenario, and we joked about this the other day. I almost never want to be the one to find a dead body, because that puts me as the last person with the body, right? Well, if you were the body, how do I know you weren't the last person with the body when it was alive? So I almost, would say, look, just, because he did the right thing by making a phone call to let them know another kid was dead, we're now going to punish him for his good deed, right? No good deed goes unpunished. That would be my defense out there as my first line to a jury. No good deed goes unpunished. He did the right thing. He saw his friend in the ward. He made a call, and now he's been accused for that death. Based on what? That he made the phone call? Had he not made that phone call, how long would it have been until anyone even thought to look for Nolan? Much less where and when and why. He doesn't make that call. This coverage is even worse. It goes into a missing case. The family's freaking out for days. No one's saying anything. To the extent no one's done anything for the family, he's done the most for anyone. I'm not saying he did a lot. I'm not saying he couldn't do more. But I'm saying he's the only one that made an effort before this became a criminal investigation. I would say my client is the scapegoat. Okay. Second from there, I want to know about the lovers' quarrel. Take me to the girl. Let me know her whereabouts. And then lastly is anyone with footage. I think the kids on the initial boat, I think they're too far down the totem pole because it seems that they were not with him. Again, it's not was he drinking, now were his friends drinking, they're all 18, 20, whether they're underage or not. They're doing college stuff, right? So maybe it wasn't right, but it's not unheard of for college kids to be drinking and, spring break type action. Take me to his last moments. That's the kid who I think has the most reason to go radio silence, private his social media. I remind him, you're saying nothing, not because you're guilty, because you are innocent until you are proven guilty, and you have no obligation to say anything to anyone. If people are accusing my client of anything, the first thing I tell them repeatedly is, shut up. You shut up. You don't talk. I talk for you. What I say is an argument. What you say is a statement that can be used. You say nothing. And I'm sure his mom knew that too.
So what do you make of the grandfather, Jerry Atkerson, the guy who owned the boat, the guy whose grandson made that call where you hear what sounds like to me a conversation going on just after somebody was hurt. Somebody was hurt. Ain't nobody gonna get me to convince me that call, that exchange that was happening before that tow dispatcher got on the line was not distress. Somebody in distress, some type of emergency is happening at that moment. It's oh my God, Nolan, you're screaming, wake up. Whoa, what have you done? That's somebody in distress, man. You got to be able to do something with that call. Are you really telling me that as a defense attorney that would not be some type of issue for you to try to get over? That wouldn't be a hurdle for you to try to get over?
So it is. I'd have to address it. You're the prosecutor, Willie, right? You're bringing this to me. You're bringing this to the jury. You're saying, look, how do you get around this? Here's how I tell you around this. One, you can't identify with certainty the voices in the background, okay? Two, even if you can, you don't know which voices, if any, had any physical contact with Nolan. The most you have are unidentified voices making statements. You don't know of any conduct or lack of conduct, okay? You don't know who was there. And this goes back to another possible charge these kids are facing. Let's say something happened to him, Nolan, on the boat, and they went from the boat to the water. Okay, now you're talking about messing with a deceased body, right? Like if something happened to him and his life ended on the boat, he should have been found in the boat. And if he went overboard, okay, and maybe the death was an accident, but going overboard would not have been an accident, right? If someone pushed his dead body overboard, okay, now you're tampering with a dead body. That's a criminal charge. Okay, so let's say for the sake of an example, a possibility, right, that he passed out from intoxication and sun exposure, the elements, the partying, it got the better of him, he passed out. These kids are all freaking out. Maybe he had a pulse, maybe he didn't, but these kids are freaking out because someone passed out on the boat. If someone tipped that body over the boat, that's a problem. But you can't tell me who did it, so you can't tell me it was my client. That's how I get around. I point the finger. I say, it's just as likely John did it, that Dennis did it, that Ethan did it, that I did it. And him being in the water, you're not going to get any fingerprints. You're not going to get any DNA evidence of if a person on the boat touched it. You can't tell me who it was with any definition. You don't know. And that's probable cause. That's reasonable doubt. That is reasonable doubt. If you put my client at the scene is not complicit with a crime.
Right.
And again, these are the legal hurdles. Again, I'm not promoting this. I don't want to be taken wrong here. This is like in a courtroom. I'm not talking the court of public opinion. I'm talking the courtroom of law where criminal charges are brought and punishments are decided, right? It's very different. Like we have a right to create a public opinion and find anyone guilty or innocent, but what we think matters less than what a judge and a prosecutor and a jury is going to think. From that point, unless you have someone, we talk about snitch on someone else, which I've not seen any of that. You need an eyewitness. An eyewitness to say, look, he did it. How do you know? I was there. And if one or more persons were involved, you need one of them to come forward to try to get immunity or a better deal. He did it. How do you know? Because I helped him. You don't have that. You have nothing directly tying anyone to the death. It seems like with that call, he was on the boat, he was in distress, whether he died on the boat or not, whether he was unconscious of the boat, but he wound up in the water. And unless he tipped over on his own, which is possible, I'm not saying probable, I'm saying as a defense attorney, I'm putting it all out there because you can't rule it out. You can't rule out he was sitting on the edge of the boat, drunk, His friends are trying to shake him into consciousness, and he tips over.
I'm ruling it out. That ain't happened, man, because they would have said it happened. It didn't happen.
They haven't said what happened.
I'm ruling it out. They didn't. Well, they said everything else. Oh, we don't know how. Last time we saw him, he was with a girl. That's what they said. So they did say
one more thing.
They gave their birth.
We don't know. Again, because we don't know when he died, we don't know how much time passed from that distress call to his death. So another argument I would make is a break in time. He was in distress with his friends, and then he was okay. And then he left the boat, and then the third lover had the lover's quarrel, and they killed Nolan. But the friends on the boat, they were good friends. They helped him out. They revived him. They gave him some water. They gave him an adrenaline shot, right? Some Red Bull, and he was on his way to go meet that girl. You can't prove that the distress call was the last time he was alive because you don't even know when he died. It could have been 5 minutes later. It could have been 2 hours later. That's the defense. That's reasonable doubt. That's the prosecutor's problem. You don't know. Because you don't know, you can't guess as a prosecutor.
So what is the unanswered questions in here? What in fact, just give me the primary unanswered question in this whole case.
I think the first thing we need, the most important question is, how did he die? Because once you know how he died, then you know the right and the wrong people to look at. How did he die? Was it a drowning? Was it a strangulation? Was it blunt force trauma to the back of the head? How did he die? I need to know that to know who could be responsible for that. And everything else will fall into place. And if you can't tell me how, which the independent autopsy couldn't, and the state examiner we're never going to see, if you don't know how, you can't say anything else. Because you're going to say, okay, the lover did it. Well, how did he do it? Because if he did it, was the other lover on the boat? Was he at the house? Was it on the beachhead? Like, you need the spoke is how. And from there, you put it together.
Yeah. Well, I think you covered everything for now, man. And I want to bring you back in after the press conference, but I do believe that the truth is forthcoming. I believe that the truth is forthcoming. I believe that there are very powerful people out there right now that are trying to stop the truth from coming out. Now, why would they do that? I mean, let me ask you, before you go, I know I said I'll let you go right now, but
that's okay.
Before you go, do you believe that there are people in Mississippi and high places who have a special interest in this case not being solved?
Yes.
Okay. Who are those people?
Everyone with something to lose, and everyone who has to deal with the fallout of whichever way the investigation goes. Because no matter which way it goes, a lot of people are not going to be happy. You have two camps in this, two opposing camps. Not everyone's. Some people are going to be very happy, some will be very upset, and the state and the prosecutor's office and the law enforcement department, they all have to deal with that. The best thing that can happen is this goes on, and you and I forget about it, and another case happens, and the interest dies down, and it just kind of stays in this limbo until we don't care anymore. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of fallout no matter what.
Yeah. My man. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Paul Mary.
Thank you so much, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Man, I'll talk to you soon. And
I look forward to it.
I appreciate you coming on the platform, man, because you always bring a unique perspective, and sometimes you piss people off, man.
It happens.
They like you though. They like you. They say you're fair. That's what they're saying.
I appreciate that. I try. Like I said, I always try to reiterate, this is not about what I think or how I feel. It's about just looking at it from a legal standpoint. I want to be fair. I thank you. Your entire audience is great. So I welcome the criticism and the compliments, and I'm just glad to be here. So if anyone learns anything from it, then I've done my job.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Palmieri.